Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Watch Your Heroes Fall. This will be Part 35, Chapter 40, entitled Phase 4, Song 11, Weekend, by Priori. Izuku, Momo, Hitoshi, and Shouto returned to UA for two major reasons. The first, they were never technically expelled, a huge embarrassment for the UA staff and a fact they decide to keep tightly under wraps. The second, the UA dorm system offers an incredibly convenient way for them to continue their pre-villainy lives uninhibited. They are given ankle monitors and strict instructions not to leave campus without prior clearance, which they accept with the full knowledge that their punishment could be so much worse. Himiko, Tomura, Magne, Dabi, Compress, Jean, and Kurogiri joined them at UA because Principal Nezu struck a deal with the government to allow them to serve out their community service hours at UA. The clerk Nezu had spoken to about this had seemed apprehensive, but not especially interested in their case beyond the temporary publicity of it all. The Hero Commission couldn't take them, not with the PR blow-up they're trying to clean up after so many of the hero careers they sponsored were dragged through the mud, not to mention the repercussions of the League's final ultimatum for them. And UA was falling by the wayside of the media's ire. The government certainly didn't care whether they served their community service at a school or picking up roadside trash. They signed the contracts for their legal responsibility over to UA, and Nezu made adjustments for their dorm room placements. Those who protect Nezu's own when he cannot are sure to be repaid tenfold. In the teacher and staff dorm building, Kurogiri's room is placed on the second floor next to Nomuri's, and on the other side of her room is the double that Shouto and Hisashi share. The rest of the adults of the League are situated on the third floor. Himiko's room is between Momo's, and Mina's on the girls' side of the fourth floor of the Heights Alliance dorms. When they arrive at UA, just a 20-minute bus ride from the courthouse, it takes the whole League about 2 hours to stop staring at their gifted rooms and enter them. "We tried to kill you," Tomura reminds Shouto when he is shown where he'll be living for the foreseeable future. "Do you remember that I had a Nomu crush your head into the ground?" Shouto, who went through the same spiel with Compress when getting him settled in a minute ago, nods. "I remember that. Yeah." Tomura blinks at the room, then back at Shouto. "You have a scar under your eye. I gave you that scar." His face is crumbling. Shouto ignores what Tomura is trying to imply. "There's a change of clothes in the wardrobe, and me and Zashi picked out some soap and stuff. That's on the bed." He leaves Tomura standing there, on the verge of tears, because he understands that he doesn't know this guy nearly well enough for his attempts at comfort to be accepted. He just says over his shoulder, "Be downstairs for dinner at 6. Bakugo's making katsudan." Kurogiri was the first person Shouto settled in, and once Nomuri's got Magne and Himiko settled, and Hisashi's got Jean and Dabi settled, and Shouto's got Compress and Tomura settled, the three of them meet in Kurogiri's room. They have already agreed to call him Kurogiri now, until he offers otherwise. The first thing Kurogiri says, a response to Hisashi stiltedly asking how he was feeling, is, "You can call me Oboro, you know." He laughs the way they've all been missing for over a decade, and Nomuri throws her arms around him in a hug. "You guys look so much older than I remember," he says. "Sho, is that gray hair I see?" Shouto does not rise to the bait. "Children do that," he says instead. Hisashi laughs. He's crying, but he laughs. "You don't look like a kid anymore either, you know." "I know," Oboro says. "I saw my reflection and I was like, yeesh, who is that guy?" He makes a face and it wrinkles around his scars. "I mean, look at all these scars. I feel like, for a guy who spent a little over a decade in an invulnerable rain cloud, I feel like these are unearned, you know?" Nomuri clings tighter, and Hisashi joins the group hug and pulls Shouto into it too because he knows his husband would never admit to how bad he needed this. Very quietly, Shouto whispers, "You earned them. You absolute fucking idiot, you earned them." Nomuri whispers back, "I feel like it's too early to be insulting him." She's sniffling and smiling. Hisashi wishes he could bottle this moment, but he settles for clinging to everyone until his arms are sore from hugging, and his cheeks are sore from smiling, and everyone's cheeks are wet. Bakugo has never cooked dinner with so much visible stress in his entire life, Ochako is sure. He's thrown himself into it with growling energy. Even Kirishima's offers to help were waved off. Sato has been grudgingly allowed to make a celebratory cake as long as he does not, on pain of death, interfere with Bakugo's ministrations. Ochako and Sue and Kaminari are watching Bakugo and Sato cook an ungodly amount of food with little smiles on their faces. The League had ridden in the bus back to UA with Class 1A, Eri, Miss Midnight, Mr. Yamada, and Mr. Aizawa, and it had been cathartic, as it was chaotic. But Bakugo had stayed stubbornly tucked into the back. He hadn't spoken to anyone in the league, or anyone from UA the whole time. And the moment they got to the dorms, he began slicing chicken like it wronged him, and measuring panko crumbs with deadly precision. Now, he's working on side dish number 3, and Ochako wonders how many people are actually going to be at dinner. He's really getting into it, huh? Sue mutters, smirking. Kaminari keeps his voice at a whisper, because any less control than that, and he's likely to be yelling with laughter. How did he manage to beat the eggs frothy with just his hands? Ochako giggles into her palms. That's speed, she says. Bakugo notices they're staring and giggling. Got something to say, Uraraka, he snaps. Ochako is still getting used to him calling her by her name, but it's a comfortable adjustment. She can see the effort, and it means more than the effect. Nothing, she sings, and Bakugo grumbles something about, for fuck's sake, why are they like this? And she and Sue and Kaminari giggle again. Himiko peeks her head downstairs first, eyes wide, and nudged along by Momo and Eri. When she sees Ochako and Sue next to the counter, her smile blows wide, and she sprints to them, arms out for a hug. But she stops 3 steps back, after drawing the attention of the whole room, and draws her arms into an anxious gesture and says, Chako, Sue, can I give you a hug? And Sue bubbles up with laughter, and Ochako grins and says, Of course, Himiko. And her and Sue meet her halfway, in a messy squish of a group hug. Himiko wraps her arms around Ochako and Sue with an unexpected show of strength and jumps them up and down a few times on her toes. I'm here, she cries. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I think you're squeezing the breath out of them, Sero jokes, drawn with the rest of the class by the commotion. In a good way, Sue croaks. Himiko leans back, setting Ochako and Sue back on solid ground. She turns to address as much of the class as she can while only facing one direction. She folds her hands together and she says, I'm sorry, which is the last thing anyone expected her to say, and it shows on their faces, even though Himiko can't see it because she's bowing at the waist. I hurt you all. And if I didn't hurt you, I tried to hurt you, and I'm sorry. It won't happen again. She stays bowed low for several seconds, and then Mina, who watched Himiko on the stand in court earlier that day and admit to things Mina doesn't think she'd ever have the strength to, guides her shoulders to an upright position, and she says, Toga, it's all right. And Himiko's eyes well with tears, big and fat and rolling down her cheeks, and Momo and Eri both abandon their roles as observers and wrap Himiko in a hug. And the whole of the class jumps up, trying to make Himiko feel better. You never even stabbed most of us, Jiro says, and Kirishima says, Bakugo said you didn't stab him at all, even when you kidnapped him. No hard feelings, bro. Shitty hair, I told you that in confidence, Bakugo screeches from the kitchen, and Kirishima laughs and apologizes. Nobody understands why this is confidential information. Shoji asks, Did you ever actually injure any of us? And Sue answers, Yep, training camp. She got me and Ochako in the woods. But seeing how everyone's expressions sober at that, Ochako adds, Tiny scratches. They barely even bled, really. Which Sue backs up readily. Where's everyone else? Bakugo spits. Food's almost ready. I think Izuku and Shouto might be sleeping, Momo says. Izuku hasn't been getting enough rest lately. We all keep telling him. We keep telling him, Izuku, you need to sleep, and he says, no, I have a plan to complete, which is just complete and utter bullshit, Hitoshi supplies, making his own way down the stairwell. His eyes are red and puffy, but nobody mentions that because this is a very reasonable day to be crying on. Momo just smiles in a way that she knows Hitoshi can interpret appropriately, and continues without drawing attention to how wrecked he looks. Yes, bullshit, but even Shouto can't get him down for a nap. He tries. Often, Himiko says. Sometimes Izuku just falls asleep on the floor of the bar, and Dabi or Magne or Jean have to carry him to bed. Hagakure says, That sounds like Midoriya. Ojiro's worried expression punctures with a laugh. I'm so sorry, I'm just picturing the villain twice carrying Izuku to bed like a fussy toddler. Sero cackles. Dude, if Todoroki can't get him to sleep, there's no hope. You're just saying that because you think Todoroki is hot, Ida points out. Sero doesn't even bother denying this, just claims it's an objective fact, while the class loses themselves in laughter. If one of you doesn't go get the 2 fucking lovebirds, then I'm gonna go get 'em, Bakugo says. He's got a wicked grin that's mostly for show, and nobody's gonna like my wake-up call. I got it, Eri squeals, and she drags the nearest person to her, Aoyama, by the wrist up the stairs. I'll go get the adults, I guess, Denki says. Want to come with, Hitoshi? And Hitoshi does, so off they go. When they're outside Heights Alliance, on their way to the staff dorms, Denki says, I missed you, Toshi. And he says it in a light, airy way, like he means it the way anybody else might mean it, but he scrubs at his eyes. I missed you too, Hitoshi says, and he doesn't try to hide what that means to him. Denki swipes a sleeve over his eyes again. So, he starts, wide a smile equipped. What I miss? Huh? What I miss? You had 2.5 months of adventures, and I only know what the news said, which, knowing Izuku, is not the half of it. Hitoshi feels something like the wind sweep the hair out of his face. It blows away all the melancholy of rejection and the weight of the loss and heartbreak of the phone call he'd been taking up in his new room in Heights Alliance dorms. All that shit melts right off his head, like the cookie dough Momo had flung into his hair last week, and he laughs. All right, so first, I gotta tell you how Izuku started this whole thing with the League. He walks us over to the bar, and he fucking knocks. Eri knocks tearfully on Izuku's dorm room door, which is awfully confident of her, in Aoyama's opinion, because they can clearly hear sobs coming from the other side. It's Shouto's voice that replies, even-toned. Yes? Eri chirps. Dinner's ready. Are you sad? I hear you crying. Do you want me to go get Dabi? Aoyama feels his brows furrowing. Why would Dabi help Shouto feel better? Or Izuku? Shouto huffs a little. It might be a chuckle. Aoyama's not great at reading him. Anything close to a laugh is a balm to Aoyama's sanity when the last time he saw Shouto's face before today was in that video. Shouto says, We're all right, Eri. Thank you. We'll be down in a minute. And Eri says, Kay. And she starts down the stairs and brings Aoyama with her. Shouto, I can't. I'm trying, I promise. I know you are. I know. Shouto's right hand, cool and frost-tipped, brushes over Izuku's forehead through his hair. Shh. It's all right. We're back. We came back. He doesn't know where the flood came from, but he'll ride it out with Izuku. Izuku, who is shaking and crying and occasionally gagging on nothing. Shouto, please, Please what? Shouto was panicking a little too. Izuku had seemed fine in court, on the bus, and with every step they took towards Izuku's room, but the moment the door had shut, he had shattered. Shouto's been holding him close with his warm arm for an hour and a half, and he still can't tell what's actually wrong. Everything is over. It's all done with. It should be fine now. He should be fine now. There's another knock on the door. Shouto feels heat he can't explain rise to his cheeks, and he tries to stamp it down. We'll be down in a minute, he snaps, and then he hates himself for it when the heat climbs high enough into his face that he doesn't immediately realize he's coated Izuku's hair with frost. On the other side of the door is Mr. Aizawa's voice. Shouto, can I come in? Shouto sighs in relief. He doesn't know when he got used to it, to having someone bigger to help him with things he can't yet understand or control, but he doesn't question it. He just says, Yeah, and tries to shake off the frost from Izuku's hair. Mr. Aizawa's expression doesn't change, but Shouto can see the stress in him anyway. You all right? He says to both of them. Shouto nods for himself. I can't get him to calm down. I don't know what's wrong. What's wrong with him? Izuku just shivers again, gagging hot and sharp against Shouto's chest. Shouto is very glad nothing is coming up. Mr. Aizawa nods. It's all right, kid, he says to Shouto. He's gonna be okay. His posture is open, like he's waiting for Shouto to give Izuku to him, and he instinctively clings tighter. What's wrong with him? He asks again. Why is nothing helping? He's just tired, Mr. Aizawa says, sitting back on his haunches. He's been carrying a lot for a long time. Tired looks like this, Shouto asks. He feels like he should know this. He feels like he's getting answers wrong on a test. It tastes like blood in his mouth. It feels like the aftershock of a slap. But of course, Mr. Aizawa's not Endeavor, so no matter how small Shouto sounds, Mr. Aizawa just gives a grim little smile. Yeah, sometimes it does. While Shouto was thinking on this, petting Izuku's hair, trying to coax anything other than tears and bile out of his lover, Mr. Aizawa says, Midoriya, do you want to see your mom? This gets Izuku's attention, and he turns his head a fraction of an inch to peek over at Mr. Aizawa. Mom? He echoes. Yeah, she's in the hallway. Izashi's got her stalled, but if you want to see her, I can call her over. Izuku's eyes well up, and bubble over again, but the tears aren't the frantic, desperate ones from before. "Mom," he sobs, and Shouto tries to comfort him. Mr. Aizawa steps out into the hallway and returns leading Miss Inko. She's red-eyed and smiling, and she gulps back an unnameable emotion before passing through the threshold into Izuku's room. She sits next to Shouto and opens her arms, and Shouto finally peels himself off of Izuku like an old sticker. When Izuku is in her arms, she says, "Hey, Izuku, you came back to me." Any waterworks that had been stilled by the strength of his mother's arms start all over again. Relief pours out with every shaking breath, and Izuku lets himself be held and rocked by his mom like it makes everything, every shitty thing he's had to do and every burden he's had to carry, all better. And maybe it does. Shouto wouldn't know. Mr. Aizawa beckons him into the hallway, and Shouto goes with him. "You all right?" Mr. Aizawa asks. Mr. Yamada slides up next to him, quieter than Shoto's ever seen him, expression squished up with concern. Shouto says, "I'm fine." And Mr. Yamada says, "Little listener, did you know that Shouto here wakes up with nightmares about once a week?" Shouto blinks because he didn't know that. "And sometimes he lays right back down and goes to sleep, but sometimes I have to do all sorts of stuff to help him get grounded again. And every time it makes me want to cry right with him, because even if it wasn't my nightmare, it's scary to see someone you love so torn up like that." And Shouto wants to nod and say he understands. He wants to go downstairs and be yanked away from his thoughts by the cheer of his classmates. He wants to walk toward his own room and plant his face in a pillow and scream until half of it is charred and the other half is an ice block, and the whole thing is damp with tears. He doesn't want his shoulders to hitch and his breath to catch, and he doesn't want to dissolve into tears in Mr. Yamada's arms, but he does. He buries his face there and cries because it has been so long since he got to be small. And he's scared for reasons he can't parse, and his bones hurt with phantom pains his body can't forget. And he feels this wave of horrible, gut-sucking grief with no source. Nobody died. He shouldn't be sad. Everything went well. It should be fine now. He should be fine now. But instead, he soaks the shoulder of Mr. Yamada's t-shirt and lets himself be comforted, like an infant. And somehow he's not embarrassed until after he's done crying. Mr. Yamada squeezes him tight, then lets go. "You've been holding that one in a while, huh?" he says. Shouto can't tell if he's teasing or asking, so he just nods. "Thank you," he whispers. Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Yamada both say, "Any time." Jean is not sure what to make of Bakugo Katsuki. If the whispers and intimations he would catch over the kids' heads are to be believed, he's the devil incarnate. Jean doesn't know the whole story, but he knows Izuku, out of anyone, Izuku, who knocked politely to ask the man who tried to kill him for a truce, was scared shitless to confront him. Magne told him that Hitoshi said Katsuki didn't treat Izuku right as kids, and that Izuku never said anything about it if he could help it. But Jean also remembers the Bakugo Katsuki, that he had a hand in kidnapping. He remembers tying Katsuki to the same chair that Magne had Himiko sit on when she trimmed her hair. He remembers how small Bakugo Katsuki had looked then. And he still looks so small now, and despite, or maybe because of, everything he has watched children accomplish since then, he still wonders how he could have ever seen these children as a threat, as they dart around him trying to tease and talk to each other while Bakugo Katsuki finishes up mashed potatoes as a side dish. Gina sat up at the island counter, just looking around, watching how the machinery of this place operates. Kaminari has pulled Tomura into helping him pick out a movie for after dinner. And Tomura, who had never had the luxury and joy of peers as far as Jean knows, is floored by the thoughtless inclusion. Magne and Mina are getting on like a house on fire, with animated input on their eyeshadow palette comparisons from a woman who looks too identical to Bakugo Katsuki to be anyone other than his mother. Comper sits on the edge of this conversation, but is mostly talking with Nomuri and Kurogiri about something Jean can't hear over the hullabaloo. Eri is ecstatic at having Himiko and Momo back to play with. She's chomping at the bit to see Izuku and Shouto again too, but they haven't come back downstairs yet. And Ochako and Sue have practically glued themselves to Himiko's side. Jean smiles at that. Himiko deserves something to go right. Dabi is a poor impression of someone who is not worried about their little brother even a little bit. Jean makes his way over to him by the stairs. "You look like you're going to jump out of your skin," he tells him. Dabi makes a little waving gesture with his hands, dismissing the comment. "Shouto's fine, Dabi," Jean says. "Stop worrying. He's got like 12 adults who would take a bullet for him, And the half of those that aren't us have probably been going to therapy for over a decade. Dabi stopped staring at the stairs, but he's still picking at the scars on his wrists. He's all right. He'll come downstairs when he's ready. And we're gonna eat more food than anyone here can reasonably fit in their stomachs. Dabi snorts out a forced laugh. That Bakugo kid cooks like crazy. What are they putting in his cereal? He can't look directly at Katsuki, eyes darting around him. The knife he's chopping chives with, the fridge behind him, the pot next to him. Kirishima Eijiro is next to him, joking and smiling, but Dabi can't look at him either because they all saw Eijiro scream for Katsuki to take his hand in an active combat zone. The cognitive dissonance is making Dabi dizzy, especially because he's known he was on the wrong side of it from the start. It's hard to dig yourself out of that hole. Jean knows. He's been digging a while. He knows. He doesn't know how they manage it, but by the time he's turned around, Izuku and Shouto have made their way silently downstairs, with Eraserhead and Present Mic and what must be Izuku's mother on their tail. It's a rat race of who gets to choke the two of them in a hug first, and Eri tries for it with Eijiro, so Eijiro just loops Eri into the group hug and squeezes them all for dear life. The whole class is clamoring to welcome them back, and Jean expects Izuku and Shouto to cower from the touch for some reason, but they both sink into it, melting like they have wanted nothing more. They probably have. Jean feels a tick spasm in his neck, and Izuku's mother asks if he's okay, and he tells her he's just fine. Dinner! Katsuki barks over the cacophony, and everyone disperses immediately to grab plates. They did not think far enough to grab a table big enough for everyone to eat at, so some people eat at the kitchen island, and some eat at the dining table, and some eat sitting on the floor, and some eat in the living room. There's over 30 people here, the whole class, and the 7 freeloaders from the league, Katsuki's parents, Izuku's mom, Mr. Aizawa, Mr. Yamada, Miss Midnight. All Might hasn't shown his face yet, but maybe that's on purpose, and he's not gonna. Katsuki certainly wouldn't, if it were him. Your protege fucks off and actively dismantles everything you stand for, uses your likeness to do it on one occasion. Yeah, there's a reason All Might has been spending most of his time at his apartment in town. He's not ready to dig himself out of the trenches yet. Katsuki can't blame him. That shit sucks. Izuku sinks toward the back of the dinner line, chatting with Shoji about something, the classes he missed, for fuck's sake. He's not trying to catch Katsuki's eye, but when he sees Katsudan plated up, they make eye contact anyway. Izuku's crying. At least that didn't change too much. He smiles at Katsuki, and Katsuki sniffs and averts his eyes to his own plate. He doesn't deserve that. He's not done digging yet. Eijiro's next to him, and he nudges Katsuki's side. See? He got your message loud and clear. Katsuki feels very tempted to explode Eijiro's head for this comment, and the temptation is stronger because he knows Eijiro won't feel a thing, will just smile and brush it off. But Katsuki's still digging himself out, damn it. So instead, he grunts something vaguely affirmative and nudges Eijiro back. Eijiro takes that as a go-ahead to put his arm around Katsuki's shoulders, so Katsuki will call it a good thing. After dinner, Jiro pulls Momo into the stairwell while everyone else sits in the living room to watch Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. Momo, she says, I think I'm in love with you. Momo is immediately pink from her ears to her shoulders. Excuse me? You heard me. I really like you, a lot. Momo has no clue what to do with her hands or her eyes, and she's fidgeting like crazy. Jiro laughs, wet, sniffling. Let me get this out, okay? Then Momo nods and Jiro takes a breath. Not gonna lie, I was pissed at you for leaving, but I kinda understood after a bit what you guys were getting at. Her voice is getting high and tight. And after Todoroki's video, I was so worried. I mean, he was in our class, you know? And then I was wondering if your parents, She buries her face in her hands like she could scrub the suspicions she'd held out of her eyes if she clawed hard enough. They came to class like every week to ask Aizawa how he was holding up, how we were holding up. I didn't want to think that they were bad, but I sat like 2 seats over from Todoroki for months, and then Uebame's whole interview, and I was just thinking about how pretty you are and how that could have been you. Could have been you and Kendo, and I never would have seen you again. Momo reaches out her hands, holds Jiro's, watches the way their fingers entwine so naturally. I didn't know the league was... how could I have known, you know? I was so scared you weren't coming back, Momo. I'm sorry, Momo whispers. I didn't want to hurt you. You know that, right? Then why not take me with you? Jiro asks. Don't answer that. I know why. It's just... I would have complied with any fucking plan if it meant I could just be there with you. Jiro, Momo says, voice a thin wire below a whisper. Jiro looks up, tear-studded lashes hanging low over dark circles of insomnia. I think I love you too. Kiss me about it. She does. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 40 of Watch Your Heroes Fall. Just 2 more chapters to go. Chapter 41 will be up next. Eager to hear your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.